My global assignment was climate change and to figure out how it affects our future and how it affects our Earth as we are living now. So, to start off, I want to give the definition of climate change. It is a global issue that is defined as a change in climate patterns. So, in particular, a change seen from the mid to late 20th century and forward is attributed to the increased levels of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases produced in the atmosphere caused by the use of fossil fuels, which humans are responsible for. So, according to the United Nations, from 1880 to 2012, the global temperature increased by 0.85 degrees Celsius, and this has caused the oceans to warm. So, from 1901 to 2010, the amounts of snow and ice have diminished and caused the rise of sea level. The global average sea level rose by 19 centimeters as oceans expanded due to the warming and the ice melting. The sea ice extent in the Arctic has shrunken every successive decade since 1979. So this is a huge issue and a huge problem that our society and our global community is facing right now. So the standards in the core subject that I decided to connect it to was science. I used the ALEC standards. So standard number 12 within the science category is analyze and interpret data and climate models to predict how global or regional climate change can affect Earth's system. So for instance, precipitation, how it affects global climate change, temperature, and their associated impacts. So, like the glacial ice volumes and all of the Arctic and Antarctica, that the climate is rising is causing the sea level to rise, also because of the melting of the ice and snow. And then the atmosphere and ocean composition. The other standard that I decided to link it to was the Science Center number 1, where the students investigate and analyze the use of non-renewable energy sources. So, for an example, they really dive into fossil fuels and figuring out how that it affects our atmosphere and how it harms our atmosphere. They research natural gases and renewable energy sources such as using solar instead of electric, how we can use wind to power our electricity, hydroelectric, and geothermal, and propose solutions for their impact on the environment. So basically, they're taking this standard and they're really connecting it to a real world situation on how to improve global climate change. So I provided you with a couple of examples. One on the left is the world and global climate models. So you can see in the mid 1970s how it begins to rise versus how it looks now. And then you can see the global warming accelerates climate change. So it begins to show you the elevated temperatures are altering the Earth's natural cycles and disrupting the ecosystems. It also shows you the disruption of hydrological cycles that increases evaporation, which causes droughts in some areas and floods in others. And you can think about tons of things that are happening across the world, like in Australia with all the brush fires and the brush fires that are happening in California. You know, these are all due to global climate change and the heat rising in the atmosphere. A couple of the novel ideas that I kind of looked up for examples was, for instance, in Sweden, there was a student who skipped school to approach the parliament about the climate change. And so she was, reaching out and doing what she knows to do as a young adolescent to make a difference. And there was also another protest in September of 2019 where young children and, middle-aged teens protested outside of New York. They protested in Berlin, and they protested all over the world. And they marched and wrote on signs and yelled, "You had a future and so should we." So it goes to show you that young people are really concerned about their future. So my novel ideas, my first thought was there are many ways to go about solving the global climate issue, but the first step of anything is awareness and how to raise awareness and show people how important this is. So obviously there needs to be research and statistics. It should also be adapted into the core curriculum within public and private schools. And I think the most important is stop the greenhouse gases. So we need to make people aware of all the different types of greenhouse gases that trap heat and let sunlight pass through the atmosphere. So they prevent the heat that the sunlight brings from leaving. I think recycling should be required from every individual in every single state. That should be a law. I also think that certain things that produce fossil fuels should be limited to necessary use only. Also, I think taking care of our marine life is a huge step in changing global climate change. Whales, for instance, help preserve our atmosphere by feeding other marine animals in the food chain, and they help stabilize the food chain. I'm also provided some visuals that help you understand what greenhouse gases are. You have water vapor. It shows you the positives of water vapor and the positives of carbon dioxide. And then on the flip side, shows you the negatives of each. Same goes for methane and ozone. Shows you the positives, and then it flips and shows you the negatives. Nitrous oxide and chlorofluorocarbons, the same thing. It goes to show you that chlorofluorocarbons are what's produced by fossil fuels and things that are not needed at all. So those are the things that need to be eliminated completely to save our global climate change. And then I use NASA Kids. I used the United Nations website and the Alabama Standards and the United Nations Foundation's website to find my information.